And it was when we did it.
Let me ask you this. What do you see as the major difference, as you understand it, even though I know you haven't been really involved in politics much since the earlier mid-70s, between the way politics was practiced in the 50s and 60s, your heyday, and today, from what you see of it today?
I can tell you exactly, and I can tell you that there'd be hundreds agree with me. The lack of civility. There is no civility in politics today. I don't like the name calling. I don't like the innuendos about people. I don't like the personality challenges all the time. And it breaks my heart, especially to see Republicans doing that kind of thing. I think it's low, and that's one difference. And the other one is the emphasis on money. Well, I can't imagine. I mean, that Huffington, or what his name was, in California, spending $30 million of his own money, and then these men setting up their own PACs so that they, with that money, they can buy people. I just don't think politics is on the level it was.
So back in the 50s and 60s, even though you had bitter fights with people like Neil Stabler and John Swainson and Zoltan Ferenczi and your adversaries in the organizational ranks of the Democratic Party, you didn't feel this personal venom and animosity and hostility toward these people, or they toward you? That seems to be evident today.
It wasn't. It was bitter fights as far as organizing, getting your vote out was concerned. But I never thought of calling one of those unless it was something in joke, you know. Neil Stabler and his wife were very good friends of mine. We would appear together on programs, and no, there was none of that. And I remember during the Constitutional Convention, Harriet Phillips was a Democratic vice chairman. We'd debate that, and then we'd go off together for coffee. And there was nothing. It just wasn't personal.
It wasn't the same.
And the way they talk now is just, to me, is unbelievable.
What about the influence of political action committees? You talk about campaign finance and money in campaigns.
Very bad. Very bad. I disapprove of them. You know, back in our day, we did try to get the doctors involved. Prior to my years, doctors hadn't been involved, and we did get them involved. And but these PACs, with their money, capable of buying votes, I just don't approve of.
What about the role of the media in politics today? I mean, television, radio, the newspapers. How is it different today than it was in the 50s and 60s? And whatever difference there is it good, bad, whatever?
The media in those days would not have written as much about people's personal life. Witness Jack Kennedy and a dozen of others you could name. They just didn't do it. And
you think that was a proper thing for them to have done? They shouldn't have written about it?
I think they could have written about it, but I don't think they have to harp on it. I think now
It's
the personal...
saturation, it's overkill?
Yeah, the saturation. There's just too many of them, I suppose. Maybe that's the answer. But these talk show hosts that preach this venom and hatred and you know, we've got to get an assault rifle in everybody's hands. I think that's...
You think that kind of talk might have contributed to something like the Oklahoma City tragedy or some of these other things?
I think it makes people feel that it isn't... some people probably feel it isn't too bad. I just don't think we're a nation that ought to be talking about being a Judeo-Christian nation on one side and then have your airways spewing out hatred, and they do spew it out. I mean, for example, I worked all my life to help women. I wanted them to be able to go to school. I wanted them to be able to have good jobs. I wanted to be able to be president. But Rush Limbaugh calls me a Nazi. What's he call me? Nazi feminist or something?
Feminazi.
Yeah, feminazi. What I mean, those things are unnecessary. He can point out where I'm wrong, but I think the name calling is.
What about some of the social, cultural issues that didn't exist really as issues back in the 60s that do exist now? Abortion, in particular, gay rights, things like that. Yeah. These things never came up. If they had come up, would you have probably found yourself, you know, feeling the way maybe Barry Goldwater does today? What are these issues doing in politics? Because Barry Goldwater, ironically, even though he was supposedly a right-wing conservative Republican against whom basically you were opposed within your party most of your life.
He's changed his...
Well, has he changed, or is he now just speaking out on issues that weren't there then?
That might
because he's a libertarian.
that might be the truth of it. I mean, we never discussed abortion, and to this day, I don't feel abortion is a political issue. It ought to be. Of course, I am pro-choice because I believe a woman should have the choice of what she wants to do with her own body. I don't think some legislator should tell her. But we never discussed that. Of course, the Equal Rights Amendment came up, and I was strong for that. And that did create some problems because while most of the states except the South passed it, for example, the Mormon Church came out against it, and where George Romney had always been a supporter of women's rights, then he had to follow his church. And I do believe that that church then helped defeat Mitt in the Massachusetts, Mitt Romney in the Massachusetts Senate. So that was the beginning, I think, of social issues that divided people.
Did that drive any kind of a wedge between you and George Romney and some of the people with whom you'd been allied back in the 60s, issues like that?
No, George and Lenore Romney have always been my friends, and we keep in touch and talk to each other. And I was an admirer of Mitt Romney's. I think he's a very fine young man. But I do think I just think the churches ought not to be in politics.
Let me ask you about your last two political campaigns, particularly in 1972, when you thought maybe you were out of politics, you were done with politics, you just completed your second stint as assistant chairman of the Republican National Committee, and then a rather obscure probate judge from Calhoun County named Mary Coleman decided she wanted to run for the state Supreme Court. There'd never been a woman on the Supreme Court. What happened?
Well, she called me and asked me if I would work for her and if I would help her. And it appealed to me, and then I found out that every probate judge had signed a petition asking her to run and said they would support her. Well, that in itself was an interesting sort of thing. So I did come with her and took her to the convention, and of course she won the nomination, the first nomination, overwhelmingly. And she probably ran one of the best campaigns I've ever worked in because she worked hard, didn't spend a lot of money, and gave it everything she had. She was known all over the state. And
right.
She belonged to so many things, Bill, that you could tap into, like women's organizations. And the probate judges came through for her. Oh, my heavens. Not 100%, but I'd say 95% came through and did something for her.
And then she was elected with Charles Levin, who was still on the court.
Yes.
The two of them were elected. He was an independent. She later became Chief Justice.
Yes, she did. And then she and Creighton retired and moved to Florida, where they both had ill health, and he died. And I still keep in touch with her, and she was so thrilled that another woman was elected to the court this last year.
Yeah, well, not only are there two women on the court, there are three.
Yeah.
Of course, two of them are
Democrats.
Two of them are Democrats and one a Republican. Maybe she wouldn't like that so much, but she likes three women. Let me ask, in 1976 then, wasn't there an effort to recruit you one more time to get into a political
Jerry
campaign?
Ford, of course, knew me, and I don't think he knew a lot of women who had been involved nationally. And so he wanted me to come down and help in the campaign. And I went down about a month or two before the convention and tried to organize women and had some success in it. And then, of course, he won the convention. And that was such a... These things are so unhappy to me when people are so mean, but...
That was running against Reagan for the nomination.
Yeah, and Betty's box was right above the Texas delegation. And they would, call out the worst things. And when Nancy came in across the hall, we didn't have to see her, and they were, talking and laughing and all. And so then the Texas delegation really worked. But anyway, he won that, and I did not want to work in that campaign because I did not feel I was conservative as the people he had hired, like Stuart Spencer and all that group. And so I left.